The garage smelled like wax and gasoline when I lifted the door and froze. My midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan looked like it had gone 12 rounds with a wrecking ball. Windshield spider-webbed, hood cratered, mirrors hanging by wires like broken bones. For a full beat, all I heard was the soft tick of cooling metal and my own breath going shallow. Then I saw it on the floor, a fleck of pink nail polish stuck to a tiny shard of glass. My stomach went cold. Karen, the HOA secretary who'd been timing my garage door with a stopwatch, preaching property values like scripture and calling me a show-off soldier. I've stared down mortars with steadier hands, but this was personal. I reached for my phone, pulled up the security feed, and there she was at 2:07 a.m., hefting a sledgehammer like she was crowned queen of the cul-de-sac. Before we dive in, drop your location and local time in the comments and hit subscribe for more wild HOA justice. When I first moved into Maple Ridge Estates, it was everything a soldier dreams of after 20 years of sand, sweat, and noise. Quiet, predictable, a cul-de-sac lined with oaks, the kind of place where sprinklers hiss at sunrise and kids ride scooters until dinner. For 15 years it was peace. Then somebody decided we needed an HOA. At first I didn't mind. The board sent friendly newsletters about community pride and maintaining standards. They trimmed the shrubs around the entrance sign, repainted the mailboxes, and threw a barbecue to celebrate. It all sounded neighborly until I met the woman who would turn that peaceful street into a battlefield. Her name was Karen Whitmore, HOA secretary and self-appointed guardian of neighborhood integrity. Mid-50s, always dressed like she was attending a board meeting, even to fetch the mail. Blonde curls stiff as a helmet, sunglasses big enough to hide behind. The kind of person who measured her power in laminated rulebooks and passive-aggressive smiles. The first time we spoke, I was walking my German Shepherd, Duke. She stopped me in the middle of the street and asked, "Do you have an approved leash length?" I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She handed me a printout about standard leash dimensions and reminded me that some homeowners prefer shorter leads for aesthetic harmony. I remember staring at her, half expecting a hidden camera crew to jump out. Nobody came. I laughed it off. You meet plenty of control freaks in the military, but they usually wear rank on their collars, not pearls. Still, there was something in Karen's tone, something brittle, like glass about to crack. I didn't know it yet, but she wasn't just enforcing rules. She was looking for enemies. The rest of the board was fine. Tom Harris, retired high school teacher, served as president, a calm, reasonable guy who once helped me with a fence permit. Sarah Lopez, a realtor, kept things organized and practical. Bob Carter, a gruff Vietnam vet, handled maintenance, but mostly preferred to fish. They all tried to keep the HOA balanced. But Karen, she wanted an empire. Her power trips started small. She issued citations for trash cans left out 5 minutes past pickup. She measured grass height with a ruler. When the burgers across the street hung a patriotic banner for Memorial Day, Karen declared it unauthorized signage. I overheard her once at a meeting whispering to Tom that people here need guidance. Tom smiled politely, but I saw the weariness in his eyes. Then came the turning point, the day my Lamborghini rolled into the neighborhood. I just bought it after years of saving deployment, bonuses, disability compensation, and a lucky stock investment. Midnight Blue Huracan Evo 5. 2-liter V10 naturally aspirated pure engineering poetry. To me, it wasn't a flex. It was a reward for surviving things most people couldn't imagine. When I parked it in my driveway, that first weekend sunlight glinting off the paint, I felt like I'd finally closed the chapter between war and peace. The neighbors loved it. Kids gawked, adults asked questions. Tom gave me a thumbs up from across the street. Everyone except Karen. She appeared that afternoon like a storm cloud, clipboard in hand. "Beautiful car," she said flatly, eyes scanning it like a customs officer searching for contraband. "Though I'm not sure a commercial-grade vehicle aligns with HOA guidelines." "Commercial grade?" I asked. "It's a car, not a bulldozer." "Well," she sniffed, "some of us find that such displays can affect property values." I smiled the way you smile when your rifle jams in training, tight, forced, and patient. "Good thing I'm not selling property then." Her jaw twitched. She scribbled something on her clipboard and walked away without another word. That was our first skirmish. Over the next few weeks, Karen's patrols became routine. I'd catch her walking slowly past my house, pretending to check mailboxes while her eyes scanned my garage. Once I saw her crouch near my lawn, taking pictures of a patch of clover. The next day, a letter arrived. Notice of weed infestation, corrective action required within 48 hours. I almost laughed. The VA landscaping crew mowed that yard twice a week. But Karen wasn't after the grass. She was testing me. When I called Tom, he groaned. "Ignore it, John. Clover's not even classified as a weed here. Karen's over-enthusiastic." "Over-enthusiastic," I repeated. "That's one word for it." "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, she's been issuing violations without board approval. We've warned her twice. If she keeps it up, we'll vote her out." I appreciated his calm, but I knew bullies like Karen. Warnings don't stop them. Consequences do. By early summer, her obsession escalated. She called the police on the Burger Kids for riding their bikes too loudly. She argued with Bob about the unauthorized color of his garden hose. When the Johnsons installed solar panels, she claimed they violated the neighborhood aesthetic. Every week brought new drama, and every meeting ended with her lecturing about standards and order. The board tolerated her because paperwork scared them more than confrontation. I, on the other hand, wasn't scared of confrontation. One Saturday, I was in my garage detailing the Lambo. The door was open, music playing low, Duke lying nearby. I had just started waxing the hood when a shadow blocked the sunlight. "Karen." "Excuse me," she snapped, arms crossed. "You can't operate a commercial garage here." I blinked. "I'm just cleaning my car." "You have equipment? Chemicals? Noise? You're obviously running a detailing business." "Karen, the only client here is me." She raised her phone and started filming. "I'm documenting this violation." I straightened slowly, my military calm kicking in. "You're trespassing, ma'am. Please leave." "This is public enforcement," she declared. "As HOA secretary, I have authority to ensure compliance." "Then comply with my request to leave my property," I said evenly. Her lips tightened. "You'll regret this." She left, and by Monday I had 3 violation letters. Excessive noise. Commercial activity. Failure to maintain closed garage policy. There was no such policy. Tom confirmed it later, sounding exhausted. "She's out of control, John. We're calling an emergency board meeting next week." "Do that," I said. "But I'll handle myself in the meantime." I wasn't angry yet, just to alert. In the Army we called it yellow level calm but ready. I could tell this wasn't over. Karen's need for control wasn't about the rules, it was about power. And when people like that lose power, they look for something or someone to destroy. Every day after that I noticed her presence. The glint of her phone lens through her blinds. The slow, deliberate pace of her car as she circled the block. Once I caught her writing notes while staring at my garage door timer app on her phone. She was literally clocking how long it stayed open. Most nights I sat on the porch, beer in hand, Duke at my feet watching the sunset. Peace had a different flavor now, bitter at the edges. I'd seen men unravel in combat zones. I could see the same madness creeping behind her polite smile. Then one evening Tom stopped by. "We're trying to vote her off the board," he said quietly, "but she's threatening to sue the HOA for discrimination. On what grounds? Apparently we're targeting her because she's a single woman." I chuckled darkly. "Tell her I'll write a character reference, enemy combatant, high persistence." Tom smirked, but his eyes were worried. "Just keep your head down, John. You know how litigious people get." I nodded, but inside, I was already running mental scenarios how to protect myself legally, physically, financially. Old habits die hard. The next morning, I installed new security cameras around the house. High definition, motion-activated, cloud-synced. Years of deployment taught me one thing: the worst threats aren't the loudest, they're the ones who smile before they strike. And Karen had been smiling a lot lately. By early July, I'd started counting how many times a day Karen's shadow crossed my driveway. 3 times before lunch, twice in the evening. Sometimes she'd stop right in front of my mailbox pretending to tie her shoe, while her phone camera conveniently pointed toward my garage. Other times she'd walk Duke's leash line measured exactly 30 feet from my front fence and glare like I was running a criminal empire under my roof. I wasn't new to surveillance. In the military, I'd lived months under drones and insurgent scopes. But this was civilian-grade obsession. The kind that brewed over envy and fermented into delusion. It started with small nonsense, a noise violation because I played classic rock while waxing the car. Then a notice of commercial activity claiming I was operating a business. And my favorite failure to maintain closed garage policy. There wasn't any closed garage policy. Tom confirmed it again over the phone, exhausted. "She's literally making them up, John," he said. "How's that allowed?" I asked. "It's not. We're already overturning most of her citations." "But you know Karen, she lives for paperwork." He wasn't wrong. Karen loved bureaucracy the way generals love medals. She wielded bylaws like weapons, and her favorite target was me. The breaking point came one humid afternoon when I stepped outside to grab a package and found a bright orange warning taped to my garage door. Final notice. Non-compliance with HOA operation standards. Cease activities immediately. It looked official, complete with her signature at the bottom and a CC line to the county zoning department. Except I knew the county had nothing to do with HOA enforcement. It was pure theater. I crumpled the letter and tossed it into the bin, but that evening I caught her outside with a flashlight shining it at my driveway like she was searching for evidence of a crime. I stepped out. Lose something, I asked. She jumped, clutching her clipboard. I'm conducting an inspection of my asphalt, of potential oil leakage. That car of yours, she pointed toward the closed garage, is not suitable for residential use. It's a car, Karen, not a tank. Same difference. It disturbs the harmony of the neighborhood. I stared at her for a beat. Harmony? You've harassed half the people on this street. Her lips tightened. You don't belong here, John. You think your military record gives you special treatment? This isn't a base. This is a community. That last word, community, dripped from her mouth like poison disguised as honey. I didn't say anything. Just turned, opened my door, and went inside. Behind me, I heard the faint click of her phone camera. Over the next week, she escalated from paperwork to warfare. Monday, 2 violation letters. Wednesday, she called animal control, claiming Duke was a dangerous breed. Friday, she left a note on my windshield that read, "Garages are for parking, not for flaunting." Even Duke could sense the tension. He'd growl whenever she passed the fence tail, stiff body rigid. At first, I tried to reason through it logically. Maybe loneliness made her unhinged. Maybe post-divorce bitterness had rotted her empathy. But reason dies fast when you realize someone is actively trying to ruin your peace of mind. One morning, Tom showed up with coffee and a weary sigh. She's been filing complaints against half the neighborhood now. The Burgers, the Johnsons, even me. You too, apparently my welcome gnome violates uniform front yard ornament policy. I didn't even know we had one. We sat on my porch watching the sun burn through the trees. You ever wonder, Tom said quietly, why some people need to be in charge so badly? Control, I replied. The illusion of power fills the hole where real purpose used to be. He nodded, staring into his cup. You sound like you've seen that before. Yeah, I said. In war zones, it's easier to fight an enemy in uniform. Karen hides behind bylaws. He laughed softly. That's poetic and terrifying at the same time. A week later, I found a folded piece of paper tucked under my garage handle. Reminder: residents must close garage doors immediately after use. Failure to do so will result in disciplinary action. The funny part, she didn't even have the authority to issue disciplinary anything. But the note wasn't what got me, it was what came next. That night I caught her walking past again, flashlight in hand, stopping at my driveway. I stayed hidden behind the curtains. She knelt scribbling in her notebook, muttering under her breath. Then as she stood up, I saw her glance straight at one of my cameras and smile. That's when I realized she wanted me to react. She wanted confrontation. Bullies feed on control, and the moment you lose your temper, they win. So I didn't give her that satisfaction. Not yet. Instead, I went full soldier mode, gather intel, fortify, wait. Saturday morning, I washed the Lamborghini again. The sun was bright, the kind that makes the paint sparkle like liquid sapphire. Music low, Duke lounging nearby, calm. For 20 minutes, peace returned. Then came the crunch of heels on gravel. Again, with the garage open, Karen's voice cut the air like a dull knife. Good morning to you, too. You're violating the noise policy. It's 9:30 on a Saturday, Karen. And you're operating what looks to be professional-grade equipment. A bucket and sponge. You're not above the rules just because you used to wear camouflage. I turned slowly, meeting her glare. I served 20 years, so people like you could feel safe enough to harass veterans in their driveways. Her jaw dropped. That's not harassment. That's enforcement. She raised her phone again, recording. I stepped closer, not menacing, just enough to fill her frame. Go ahead. Film it. Just make sure you spell my name right in the complaint. For a split second, she faltered. Then her lips curled into a thin smile. We'll see how long that fancy car of yours lasts when the HOA finds out what kind of neighbor you really are. She stormed off. I stood there, water dripping off the sponge, feeling something colder than anger settle in my chest, foreboding. That evening, Tom called again. We held a meeting. Unanimous vote to suspend Karen's issuing privileges until further notice. About time. Don't relax yet, she's furious. Said something about proving a point. Proving a point. Those words echoed like a threat wrapped in civility. The next few days she went quiet. No letters, no photos, no patrols. You'd think that would have calmed me down, but silence can be more dangerous than shouting. One night I took Duke for a walk and noticed Karen's blinds twitch as I passed. Her house lights flicked off instantly. Duke growled low. I felt the hair on my arms rise. She was watching again. When I got home, I opened my security feed cameras. Clear, no movement. But around midnight, the motion sensor pinged once. A silhouette passing near the fence line. Too far for identification. Too deliberate to be random. The next morning, a new notice appeared on my porch. You are in violation of HOA. Code 7.2. Unsafe activities involving hazardous equipment. Under details, she'd written, vehicle polishing chemicals pose fire risk. Please remove. I laughed out loud, tore it in half, and tossed it in the trash. That night, I installed more cameras infrared this time. One on the driveway, one in the garage, one pointed directly at her house. Call it paranoia if you want. But combat taught me this: when someone declares war, you prepare your defenses before dawn. Karen had declared hers in paperwork and whispers. She just hadn't realized I'd spent half my life learning how to deal with hostile territory. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't the kind of man who waited for backup. The next move would be hers, and when it came, I'd be ready. I used to think silence meant peace, but in a war zone or in a neighborhood run by a woman like Karen, silence is just the space between attacks. For 2 straight weeks, she didn't show her face. No notes, no letters, no courtesy warnings tucked under my windshield wipers. The neighborhood went eerily calm. Even Duke stopped growling at the window. You'd think that would have made me relax. It didn't. It made me sharpen my awareness. The first sign came one morning when I stopped by the cafe near the highway. The barista, who lived 2 streets down, leaned in and said, "Hey John, you okay? I heard you're being investigated by the HOA." Investigated? I frowned. For what? She lowered her voice. Karen's been saying you're running an unlicensed business. Some kind of car repair side hustle. She told people she saw strangers visiting your house late at night. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, the strangers are the VA physical therapists. I'm rehabbing my knee, not changing oil for clients? She winced. She's spreading it everywhere, man. Facebook group, Nextdoor app, you name it. I thanked her and walked out, but my stomach twisted. Karen wasn't just harassing me anymore, she was shaping the narrative. She wanted to make me look guilty before anyone even questioned her sanity. When I got home, I found Tom waiting on my porch. His face looked 10 years older than it had a month ago. We had another meeting, he said, rubbing his temples. Let me guess, Karen, she's accusing you of endangering the community. Claims your car's chemicals could cause an explosion. So now I'm a terrorist. She didn't use that word, but she hinted. I stared at him, unblinking. You going to let her keep doing this? He sighed. We're trying, John. The rest of us can't vote her out without a special session. And legally, she's still part of the board. We're stuck with her for now. Then I'll handle her myself, I muttered. He frowned. Don't. She wants that. She's the kind who plays victim the moment someone pushes back. I nodded, but inside I was done playing defense. That night I walked the property line with a flashlight checking locks and camera feeds. My instincts had kicked back to combat mode, the old cold clarity that kept me alive overseas. Every creak in the wood, every flicker of light, every rustle in the grass felt like an ambush waiting to happen. The paranoia wasn't unfounded. 2 days later I caught Karen inside my driveway again. It was early morning. I'd just let Duke out when I heard the gate click. Through the security cam feed on my phone there, she was kneeling by my mailbox with a tape measure. I stepped outside. You lost Karen. She jumped. I'm measuring easement distance. There have been reports of property line encroachment. From who? Anonymous sources. Anonymous meaning you. She ignored me and kept measuring. Get off my property, I said evenly. I'm within HOA jurisdiction. Last warning, Karen. She stood chin tilted, like a general facing an inferior. You think your soldier act intimidates me. This isn't a war zone, John. You can't bark orders here. Then stop acting like a dictator. She pointed her finger, trembling with rage. You're unstable. Everyone can see it. You scare people. Duke growled behind me, a low rumble. Karen took one step back, muttering something about calling the authorities, and stormed off. I watched her go, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the effort it took not to lose my composure. By now, most of the neighborhood was divided. Half avoided her entirely. The other half, mostly new residents who didn't know better, still believed her story that I was a disruptive influence. Sarah, the realtor on the board, stopped by one evening. She looked uneasy. John, off the record, she said quietly, Karen's been emailing the HOA's insurance provider saying you're a liability risk. She claims your military PTSD makes you dangerous. PTSD, I laughed, incredulous. She's diagnosing me now. She's trying to scare people. You should know she's also been contacting local realtors to flag your address as a potential dispute property. That one hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just harassment anymore, it was defamation. She wanted to erase my reputation. I took a deep breath. Sarah, do the others believe her? Tom and I don't. Bob doesn't either. But rumors spread faster than truth. I stared at my reflection in the Lamborghini's side mirror. The calm blue paint shimmered under the porch light, mocking me, a piece of art that had become a lightning rod for hatred. That night, I opened my old deployment chest. Inside were my medals, photographs, and one small black notebook, my field log. On the inside cover, I'd once written a line from my commanding officer, "Don't fight anger with anger, fight it with preparation." So I prepared. Over the next few days, I set up additional floodlights. I upgraded my camera storage to off-site cloud backup. I even installed a silent alarm that pinged my phone whenever motion was detected near the garage. Every precaution made me feel both secure and on edge, like I was fortifying a bunker in suburbia. Duke followed me everywhere, ears twitching, always alert. He knew something was coming too. On Thursday, the HOA held a routine meeting at the community center. Against my better judgment, I went. I wanted to see how deep her claws had sunk. The room buzzed with low chatter when I walked in. Karen sat at the front, flanked by a stack of folders so tall it looked like she was preparing for a court trial. When she saw me, her lips curved into that smug, polished smile. "Ah, Mr. Davis," she said sweetly. "So glad you could join us." Tom nodded awkwardly from his seat. "Let's keep this civil, please." Karen wasted no time. The board has received multiple complaints regarding Mr. Davis's activities, including alleged chemical storage, noise disturbances, and possible unregistered business practices. I leaned forward. "And by multiple, you mean you." She ignored me. "Additionally, I'd like to propose a new amendment. Garages must remain closed except during entry and exit, and vehicles exceeding 75 decibels of engine noise must not operate within the neighborhood." Tom blinked. "Karen, that's absurd. That would ban half the cars in this city." "Maybe so," she said, "but we have to protect our property values from excess." The word hung in the air like a veiled insult. Everyone knew who she meant. I stood slowly, my voice calm but cutting. "You know what's excessive, Karen, spending your retirement, spying on your neighbors." Her face flushed red. "Excuse me, you've been fabricating violations, trespassing on property, and harassing families. You called the cops on 8-year-olds, for God's sake." Tom tried to intervene, but I wasn't finished. "You don't care about community. You care about control." For a second, her mask-cracked eyes, wide jaw tight, but she quickly regained her composure. "Your aggression is exactly why people feel unsafe. People feel unsafe because you're a bully." A murmur rippled through the room. Bob, the maintenance guy, muttered, "He's not wrong." Karen slammed her folder shut. "I will not be disrespected by someone who hides behind his service record." That one hit below the belt. The room went dead silent. I stared at her. "I didn't serve for respect, Karen. I served so you could have the freedom to be this insufferable." Gasps. Someone in the back whispered, "Damn." She stormed out before the vote could continue. Tom called a brief recess, shaking his head. "John, I think you just made her your full-time enemy." I gave a humorless smile. She already was. After that night, things got darker. I started finding small scratches on my car door. The motion lights flicked on randomly at 2 or 3 a.m., but every time I checked the footage, the intruder stayed just out of frame. One morning I found a note under my wiper. "Enjoy it while it lasts, soldier." My blood ran cold. It wasn't a warning, it was a promise. So I set my trap. Saturday morning smelled like rain and gasoline. I loaded my overnight bag into the back of my Honda Accord, gave Duke an extra scoop of kibble for the neighbor who'd be feeding him, and glanced at my Lamborghini one last time before locking the garage. The midnight blue paint gleamed even under gray clouds. Perfect, untouched, peaceful. I was driving 2 hours north to my sister's place. She'd been swamped with her 2 kids while her husband traveled for work, and I made it a point to visit every few weeks. Family kept me grounded, a reminder that not every fight required armor. As I pulled out of the driveway, I noticed Karen's curtains twitch, a flash of blonde hair, and that same omnipresent phone camera. I waved just to be petty. She didn't wave back. I didn't think about her for the next 36 hours. Sunday night, I got home just after 7. The street was calm, lights flickering in tidy windows. The kind of suburban quiet you could mistake for safety. I parked the Accord, carried my duffel inside, sorted through mail. Duke barked once from the back door, tail wagging. Routine. Normal. Then I decided to check the garage. It wasn't because I heard anything, it was instinct. Years of deployment teach you to trust that sixth sense, the one that whispers when something's off, even if everything looks fine. When I opened the door, the world tilted. My Lamborghini looked like a corpse. The windshield was spiderwebbed in 1,000 shards, the hood cratered with deep dents. Both side mirrors hung by their wires, the front bumper torn off completely. The passenger door gaped half open, twisted at an angle that no mechanic could forgive. Even the emblem, my golden bull, had been ripped clean from the grille. For a long still second I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then the smell hit me, oil coolant and burnt rubber. I stepped closer, hands trembling, scanning every inch like I was looking at a fallen soldier. The tires were slashed, the body panels were punched in, not scratched. It wasn't a keying or random vandalism. It was rage. Controlled, deliberate, personal. $80,000 in damage minimum. Probably more. And then I saw it. On the floor by the rear wheel was a tiny fragment of pink nail polish, the same obnoxious rose shade Karen always wore. My vision tunneled. My heartbeat slowed into that old familiar rhythm, steady, surgical, lethal calm. I'd felt it before entering ambush zones. I was angry, yes, but anger wasn't the right word. This was precision fury. I forced myself to act methodically. Step 1, record everything. I pulled out my phone, snapped hundreds of photos from every angle, cataloged the damage, then opened my security system app. My cameras were motion-triggered. 2 covered the driveway. 1 faced the garage. Footage loaded instantly. I scrubbed through Saturday night empty street. Nothing unusual until 2:07 a.m. There she was, Karen. Marching up my driveway in her pink cardigan, hair tied tight, carrying a sledgehammer like a trophy. The infrared caught her perfectly. She paused at the garage door, glanced around, then crouched to force it open, something she must have learned from her obsessive inspections. Once inside, the feed showed 20 straight minutes of chaos. Metal striking metal. Glass shattering, each hit punctuated by her face, twisting with hatred. And when she walked out, she didn't even rush. She took one long look back at the car, my car, and smiled. I exhaled through my teeth. Got you. I called 911. The dispatcher's calm voice was a lifeline. Sir, please confirm, no one's injured, just the Lamborghini. That earned a small chuckle, quickly stifled. Understood. Officers are on their way. Do not confront the suspect. Oh, I won't, I said. She already buried herself. While waiting, I called my insurance provider, USAA, a godsend for veterans. They assured me an adjuster would arrive first thing Monday morning. We've handled worse, the agent said. Just make sure you get that police report number for the claim. When the patrol car pulled up 20 minutes later, red and blue lights flickering against the ruined metal, the scene looked surreal. Officer Willow stepped out, a tall, calm man in his 30s, the kind of cop who doesn't talk much but notices everything. He circled the car once, let out a low whistle. You're sure this wasn't a break-in attempt? Nothing else was touched, I said. Tools, bikes, everything else is still here. He crouched by the tire marks. This is personal. Someone wanted to hurt you, not rob you. I already know who, I said, handing him my phone. Security footage. He watched in silence. When the hammer came down for the 5th time, his expression hardened. That's about as clear-cut as it gets. He looked at me. You want to press charges? Absolutely. He nodded. Let's make it official. But first, mind, if we have a little fun, I raised an eyebrow. Sometimes people dig their own graves faster when they don't know who's listening, he said, holding up his recorder. Let's call her together. I dialed Karen's number hit speaker. It rang twice before her voice answered, clipped and defensive. What do you want, John? Someone destroyed my car this weekend while I was out of town, I said evenly. Do you know anything about it? Pause. Static. Then, why would I know anything about your stupid car? You've been complaining about it for weeks, I said. And I've got security footage of someone who looks exactly like you. Her tone snapped. Good. I'm glad someone finally did something about that ridiculous show-off machine. You think you're special, don't you? Flashing your money around while the rest of us work honest jobs? You're just a broken-down soldier living off pity. Checks Willow mouthed to keep her talking. I took a slow breath. Karen, are you saying you destroyed my car? Damn right I did. Every night I had to look at that thing and remember you, some washed-up vet acting like he's better than everyone else. I earned what I have. You, Willow, cut in smoothly. Ma'am, this is Officer Willow with the city police. You just confessed to felony vandalism. We'll be at your residence shortly." There was a sharp gasp, a clatter, and the line went dead. He looked at me. "You mind if we stop by together? Lead the way." 20 minutes later, the cul-de-sac glowed red and blue again. Karen was standing on her porch, pale and trembling, phone in one hand, sledgehammer leaning against the railing like a bad prop. When the officers cuffed her, she screamed about injustice, about veterans being violent freeloaders, about how it's not fair that he gets a luxury car while I work a real job. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching her melt down. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Tom came out, his face grave. Sarah whispered, "Oh my God." Karen caught sight of me and shrieked, "You ruined my life." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As the patrol car pulled away, her voice echoed down the street. "This isn't over." Willow turned to me. "She's not getting out of this one. Felony property damage, open and shut case. Sleep easy tonight." I tried. I really did. But sleep didn't come. Because deep down I knew she wasn't done. The next morning the adjuster arrived, a young guy in a suit who looked like he'd stepped out of a car commercial. His jaw practically dropped when he saw the damage. "Wow, this is targeted," he said softly. "You sure you don't live next to an ex-wife?" "Worse," I muttered. "An HOA Karen." He laughed nervously, then got to work photographing every dent. "We'll handle everything, sir. Your policy covers full repair. 6 to 8 weeks tops." "Good," I said, but my mind wasn't on the car anymore. It was on Karen's last words. This isn't over. I'd faced enemies who meant that before, and they never said it unless they had something left to lose. The neighborhood was quiet that evening, too quiet. Curtains stayed closed. People avoided eye contact. For once, I wasn't the spectacle. She was. But something told me her humiliation wouldn't end with handcuffs. And I was right. Because less than 48 hours later, Karen would come back with the same sledgehammer, and this time she wouldn't aim for the car. By Monday morning, the neighborhood buzzed like a hornet's nest. Word spread fast when someone in a quiet HOA gets arrested for felony vandalism, especially when the victim owns a $300,000 Lamborghini. Some neighbors stopped by pretending to check in, but their eyes lingered on the garage like they were visiting a crime scene. Others pretended not to see me at all, quietly slipping inside their homes, as if my existence might summon more drama. I didn't mind the gossip. I'd learned long ago that silence makes people talk louder. What mattered was that Karen's little empire of control had crumbled in 24 hours, and the proof was all over my security footage. USAA had already filed the insurance paperwork the police had. My statement and Officer Willow promised to keep me updated. Still, I wasn't naive enough to relax. I'd fought too many battles to believe a single arrest could end a war. That evening, I was sitting on my porch with Duke when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end was trembling, Sarah the realtor and one of the HOA board members. "John, I just wanted to apologize for all of this," she said quietly. "We should have acted sooner. Karen's behavior, it's been getting worse for months." "You don't need to apologize for her," I said. "She made her own choices." Still, she sighed. "She's been calling everyone she knows since she got out on bail. She says you framed her, that the video was fake." "That's rich," I muttered. "Let me guess, she's playing the victim." "Exactly. She's claiming PTSD discrimination, says you threatened her with violence. She even filed a complaint with the county mediation office." I almost laughed. "She smashed my car with a sledgehammer. What's she going to argue?" "Temporary blindness from jealousy." Sarah chuckled softly, but then lowered her voice. "Be careful, John. You humiliated her. That kind of person doesn't forgive, they retaliate." I looked out across the street. Karen's house sat dark and still, curtains, drawn, driveway empty. But I knew she was inside stewing. "I'm always careful," I said, hanging up. Tuesday morning I got a call from Officer Willow. "Morning, John. Just letting you know, Karen's lawyer's already pushing for a plea deal. She's panicking. Her sister bailed her out yesterday." "Let me guess. She's not taking responsibility." "Not yet, but we recorded her full confession on your call." "That's ironclad." He hesitated before continuing. "She's also been ranting about how unfair everything is. Keep saying you ruined her life." "I didn't ruin anything," I said. She swung the hammer. I just hit record. "Yeah," he said, "but don't underestimate desperation. People like her double down when they're cornered. Keep those cameras rolling." I already planned to. For a brief moment, the week felt normal again. My garage was taped off for inspection. The insurance adjuster came back for follow-up photos, and Tom from the HOA dropped by with a formal letter of apology signed by the entire board. We're removing Karen from her position, Tom said, looking tired but relieved. We've had enough of her tyranny. The residents voted last night. Good, I said. You'll sleep better without her measuring your grass. He chuckled. Understatement of the year. As he left, he added, She'll probably move soon. She can't show her face here anymore. I wanted to believe him, but evil doesn't vanish, it regroups. That night I sat in my living room reviewing footage from my cameras. I noticed something strange at exactly 6:42 p.m. The motion sensor at the side gate triggered, but the camera showed nothing, just a brief flicker, then static. A second later it resumed like nothing happened. Power surge, maybe. Or maybe someone testing blind spots. I marked the timestamp and moved one of the cameras closer to the garage door, angling it toward the street. Then I called it a night, leaving Duke inside the house this time instead of the backyard. My instincts were humming again. The next day, while I was at workbench, repairing one of the dented mirrors for the insurance claim, a familiar voice pierced the quiet. John Davis, I turned. Karen stood at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed, but burning with that same venomous intensity. You've destroyed me, she shouted. Do you know that I lost my job because of you? I put down the wrench. You lost your job because you committed a felony. You set me up, you faked that footage. There's a police officer who would love to hear you say that again. Want me to call him? Her nostrils flared. You think you're some kind of hero because you wore a uniform, but all I see is a bully who hides behind it. I took a step closer, voice steady. The difference between us, Karen, is that I earned my scars doing something useful. You earned yours fighting over lawn height. Her face twisted, trembling between rage and humiliation. I'll make you pay for this, she hissed before storming off. I didn't respond. The camera on my porch had caught every second. That evening I reviewed the footage again, because with people like Karen, confrontation was always a prelude to escalation. The video showed her marching toward my house, screaming, then storming away. But at the very end of the clip, just before the timestamp rolled to black, I noticed something chilling. She'd dropped something. Zooming in, I saw it glinting faintly under the streetlight, a key. I retrieved it later using gloves. It was a simple metal key with a sticker labeled garage. My stomach sank. Karen had a copy of my garage key. The HOA had required me to provide a spare for emergency access last year when they standardized security codes. I'd given it to the board in good faith, probably through Karen. I locked every entry point in my house and called Willow again. You're telling me she might still have access to your property, he said, tone sharp now. She had a key in her hand yesterday. Dropped it during another confrontation. Jesus. Okay, keep your doors locked. We'll send a patrol through the neighborhood tonight just to be safe. I thanked him, but I already knew the truth. A patrol car might deter criminals, but it wouldn't stop someone fueled by obsession. At 1:03 p.m., Duke started barking. Low, urgent, protective. I muted the TV, heart pounding. My phone buzzed a notification from the garage camera. Motion detected. The live feed flickered on. The view was grainy under the security light, but clear enough to see Karen standing in the middle of my driveway again, holding the same damn sledgehammer. She wasn't looking at the car this time. She was looking at my house. I called 911 instantly. This is John Davis. The woman who vandalized my car is back. She's armed. She's trying to break in. While I stayed on the line, she lifted the hammer and started shouting into the night. You ruined my life, you bastard. I'll finish what I started. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. Units are en route. Stay inside. Do not engage. But she was already charging. The hammer slammed into my front door with a deafening crack. Duke barked like a thunderstorm. The second swing never landed. I opened the door halfway, just enough to meet her momentum. Years of combat training took over. I sidestepped, grabbed her wrist, twisted and used her own strength to pull her forward. The hammer flew from her hands, clattering against the concrete. She screamed, clawing at my face, nails raking the air. I could smell alcohol on her breath mixed with desperation. Stand down, I barked. She didn't. So I did what training demanded, a single controlled strike to her jaw. Enough to stop, not to maim. She collapsed out cold. I stepped back, breathing hard as Duke growled beside me. The hammer lay on the ground between us, a silent testament to how far she'd fallen. Minutes later, flashing lights painted the street red again. Officer Willow jumped out first, eyes wide. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered, seeing Karen on the ground. Didn't she just make bail? She did, I said flatly, and she brought her weapon of choice. Paramedics checked her pulse. She was fine, bruised, pride, broken ego, but still alive. When she came to, she started screaming again about conspiracies, fake footage, and how I'd attacked an unarmed woman. Willow just shook his head. Ma'am, you broke into a home with a deadly weapon while on bail. You're done. They cuffed her again, and as they dragged her toward the patrol car, I caught her glare, pure hatred, cold and trembling. Enjoy prison, Karen, I said quietly. At least there's someone else will finally tell you what to do. That night, as the last siren faded, I sat on my porch with Duke lying at my feet. The adrenaline drained slowly, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Across the street, Karen's porch light flickered off. The house stood silent, empty, like a hollow monument to envy and control. And for the first time in months, I let myself breathe. But I also knew the story wasn't over. Because in the morning, she wouldn't just be the neighborhood nuisance anymore. She'd be headline material, and this time the HOA couldn't hide her crimes under fine print. You'd think that after a night in handcuffs and a face-to-face encounter with a combat veteran, Karen would have learned her lesson. But the thing about people who thrive on control, they can't handle losing it. She was denied bail the first time, yet somehow her lawyer managed to argue mental distress and intoxication as mitigating factors. So by Wednesday morning, she was back home again, barely 72 hours after swinging a sledgehammer at my front door. Tom called to warn me. I just got off a call with the county clerk. They released her this morning. Court date set for 2 weeks from now. Unbelievable, I muttered. They're stacking charges, vandalism, assault trespassing, but it might take time. Just be careful, John. Careful. The word had lost meaning by now. I'd been careful for months. I'd done everything by the book, and still this woman had turned my peaceful home into a war zone. But this time I wasn't going to let her get close. I called Officer Willow myself. You've got to be kidding me, he said. She's out again, yep, and I don't plan to give her another chance. Good. Keep your cameras on. If she so much as breathes in your direction, we'll throw her back in. That night, I reinforced the locks, adjusted the camera angles, and set Duke's bed near the door. Then I tried to sleep, but my brain refused. I kept hearing the echo of her words from that last arrest. You ruined my life. I'll finish what I started. The following day, life in Maple Ridge Estates pretended to go back to normal. Neighbors trimmed their hedges, kids played, and the cul-de-sac sprinklers hissed in rhythmic arcs. But the calm was fake fragile. Every set of eyes that met mine did so cautiously, like they were looking at a man carrying a ghost. Around 6 p.m., the USAA adjuster stopped by again with an update. The Lamborghini repairs were underway. Parts ordered from Italy, everything moving faster than expected. 6 weeks tops, he said with a reassuring smile. Honestly, you'll barely recognize it. It'll be better than new. I was standing with him in the driveway going over paperwork when movement caught my eye. Across the street, Karen's front door slammed open. She was back. Her hair was disheveled, her pink cardigan wrinkled and stained, but it was her expression that froze the air. A look I'd seen before on faces in desert villages just before things exploded. Blind, boiling rage. John Davis, she screamed, voice cracking. You destroyed my reputation, my job, my life. I glanced at the adjuster. His eyes widened. Should I go? I said quietly. Now. He nodded and backed toward his car, fumbling for his phone. Karen was already storming across the lawn, something glinting in her hand. Not her phone this time, her sledgehammer, the same one she'd used before. Karen, stop, I warned. Don't do this. She didn't stop. You think you're untouchable, she shrieked. Hiding behind your cameras, your police friends, your stupid car. You humiliated me. You made me a joke. She raised the hammer. Reflex took over. I shifted into stance, left foot angled, shoulders square, calm breathing. My mind wasn't in the suburbs anymore. It was in a training yard in Kandahar, hearing the instructor's voice echo, use momentum, not muscle. The hammer came down in a blur. I sidestepped, grabbed her wrist, twisted. Her scream tore through the still air. The hammer clanged against the concrete, bouncing harmlessly away. She spun, clawing at me, nails slicing through the air. I'll kill you, stand down, I barked. But she lunged again. So I did what I'd been trained to do, neutralize, not kill. One quick controlled strike to the jaw. Her body went limp, instantly collapsing like a marionette with its strings cut. She hit the ground hard out cold. The adjuster's voice trembled behind me. Oh my God. Did you just self-defense? I said flatly. Call 911. Tell them she attacked me again. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. The police, 5. Willow stepped out of his cruiser, rubbing his eyes like a man who couldn't believe he was living the same day twice. Jesus Christ, John, he muttered. What did she do now? Came at me with the hammer again. You'll see it on camera. He looked at Karen's unconscious form being loaded onto a stretcher. You okay? Fine. She barely grazed me. He exhaled. All right. Let's make this quick. They reviewed the footage on my phone right there on the driveway. Everything was clear as daylight, her charging the weapon, the strike, the fall. When Karen regained consciousness, she started wailing. He hit me, he assaulted me, Willow cut her off. You broke into his property, attacked him with a deadly weapon while on bail for a felony. Congratulations, ma'am, you just upgraded your sentence to years. She screamed curses as they cuffed her again, kicking against the stretcher. This isn't over, I'll sue all of you, Willow smirked. You might want to focus on your plea deal first. The paramedics shut the doors, the sirens wailed, and she was gone. After they left, the adjuster lingered beside me, still pale. That was, wow, she's lucky you didn't kill her. Yeah, I said quietly, staring at the dent her hammer had left in the concrete. She's lucky. He hesitated, then added, I've seen a lot of insurance claims, man, but this one's different. People usually wreck their own cars, not get attacked for owning one. I managed a tired smile. Welcome to HOA country. He chuckled weakly, then excused himself. When the street finally emptied, the silence felt heavier than usual. Not peaceful, just hollow. By midnight, the adrenaline was gone, replaced by something colder, an ache that reached down to the bones. I sat on the porch, Duke at my feet, replaying everything in my head. Every warning I'd ignored. Every red flag that I'd brushed off as annoying but harmless. Every smug smile she'd worn while pretending to enforce her imaginary rules. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Across the street, Karen's house glowed under the streetlight windows, dark lawn empty. The home of a ghost. Tom arrived the next morning, eyes wide when he saw the police tape. Again, he ran a hand through his thinning hair. I swear she's going to make this HOA famous for all the wrong reasons. Already did, I said. He handed me a paper, an official notice from the board. We voted last night to remove her permanently, effective immediately. You'll get an apology letter from the HOA president today. Make it handwritten, I said dryly. I want to frame it next to my car repairs. Tom actually laughed. You've earned that. Later that afternoon, Officer Willow stopped by one last time. Judge denied bail this time, he said. Her lawyer didn't even fight it. Between the confession, the footage, and now an assault charge, she's looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. Justice finally catches up, I murmured. It usually does. Eventually, he gave me a faint smile. You handled yourself well, John. A lot of people in your position would have lost it months ago. Discipline, I said simply. Learned it the hard way. He nodded. You know, the DA said something interesting. Turns out Karen used to brag about wanting a luxury car just like yours. Said she'd buy one as soon as the HOA paid her what she deserved. Guess jealousy was the real motive all along. I looked toward her house. Jealousy destroys faster than any hammer. True, he said. But you rebuild stronger. When he left, I stood in the driveway, the smell of summer grass mixing with faint traces of motor oil. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel hostile. The Lamborghini was still at the shop, but in that moment I realized the car wasn't the point. The real damage hadn't been to metal or glass, it was what she'd tried to break inside me. But she'd failed. Because no matter how many times life throws you into battle war injury, or even an HOA gone mad, you get up, rebuild, and keep driving forward. And when Karen's front porch light finally flicked off for good that night, I knew one thing for certain. She'd destroyed everything trying to prove I didn't deserve peace. But peace wasn't hers to take. It took months for the neighborhood to quiet down again. The kind of quiet that doesn't just come from lack of noise, but from the absence of tension, from relief, from knowing that the storm had finally passed. Karen's house sat empty, now its blinds drawn like eyelids that refused to open. For sale, sign out front, weeds curling through the once perfect mulch she'd obsessed over. No one touched it, no one dared. Her name had become a curse whispered over backyard fences. Did you hear what happened to Karen? A story traded like a ghost tale at block parties. Meanwhile, my life slowly returned to something resembling normal. The Lamborghini had come back from the shop looking better than new. USAA had pulled strings, flown parts in from Europe, and when I saw that midnight blue paint gleaming again, I felt something I hadn't in months. Closure. I remember running my hand over the hood, the polished metal cold beneath my palm. Welcome home, buddy, I whispered. Duke barked once as if agreeing, but what struck me most wasn't the car's perfection, it was the irony. That a machine built for speed had survived war, fire, and fury, yet its biggest threat had been a jealous neighbor with a clipboard. Karen's trial came 6 weeks later. I didn't want to go, but Willow insisted my testimony would make the case airtight. When I entered the courtroom, she was already there, smaller somehow. Haircut, shorter shoulders hunched, no trace of the power-hungry enforcer she used to be. She didn't look at me. Not once. The prosecutor played the footage, Karen with the sledgehammer, Karen confessing over the phone, Karen charging across my lawn again. The jurors' faces said everything. Some shook their heads. Others just looked sad. When the defense tried to argue temporary mental breakdown, Willow leaned over and whispered, "If destroying someone's car is a breakdown, half the country would be in therapy." Karen's lawyer begged for leniency, painting her as a lonely woman whose emotional instability manifested in misguided frustration. But no amount of pity could erase the facts. The judge denied bail, revoked probation, and handed down the sentence 5 years in state prison with mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Karen broke down sobbing. The sound didn't move me, it just echoed like static. Afterward, outside the courthouse, Tom and Sarah were waiting. "You okay?" Tom asked. "Yeah," I said. "Finally." Sarah exhaled. The board voted to dedicate next month's meeting to revising the HOA charter. No single person will ever hold unchecked authority again. "Good," I said. "You're learning from her mistakes." Tom smiled faintly. "And we owe you an apology again. We should have protected you sooner." I shook my head. "You can't protect people from envy, Tom. You can only make sure it doesn't get a position of power." Life after Karen was strangely boring. And boring for once felt wonderful. The HOA replaced her with a young couple, reasonable, calm, too busy raising twins to care about lawn color. Neighbors started greeting each other again. The Burgers kids went back to riding their bikes in the cul-de-sac. Even the mail carrier started smiling again when he dropped off letters instead of violation slips. I spent my mornings fixing things, fences, garden lights, the old deck out back. The routine felt like therapy, not the kind you talk through, but the kind you build with your hands. Some afternoons people would stop by and ask about the car. "That's the famous Lamborghini, right? The one from the HOA story." I'd nod, laugh, and tell them to keep their distance if they saw a woman with a clipboard. It became a running joke, Karen-proofing the neighborhood. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted everything gold, I found myself sitting on the porch, beer in hand, Duke curled at my feet. The air was soft and heavy with summer. I thought about all that had happened, the smashed glass, the courtrooms, the screaming, the silence that followed, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to before. I wasn't angry anymore. She'd taken so much time, peace, security, but she'd given me something in return: perspective. You can fight wars in deserts, lose friends, face death, and still believe the world is black and white, good guys and bad guys, order and chaos. But then someone like Karen walks into your peaceful life and proves that evil doesn't always carry a gun. Sometimes it carries a rulebook and a sense of entitlement. A few weeks after the verdict, Willow dropped by one last time, leaning against his cruiser as I was washing the car. "Looks brand new," he said. "Feels brand new too," I replied. "Even the insurance adjuster called it a miracle job." He nodded. "You know, we found out something interesting during the sentencing hearing. Karen used to work at a luxury dealership years ago, got fired for stealing a client's keys and joyriding." I blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope. Guess old habits die hard." He chuckled. "At least this time the only joyride she's taking is on a prison bus." We both laughed, the sound light and easy. Before leaving, he looked around the cul-de-sac and said, "You know, when I first got called out here, I thought it was just another petty HOA spat. Turns out it's one of the wildest cases I've ever seen." I smiled. "Welcome to suburban warfare, officer." He tipped his hat and drove off. Over time, Karen's name faded from conversation. Her house eventually sold to a young family who painted the shutters navy and filled the porch with hanging plants. They never asked about the past, and no one volunteered the story. The cul-de-sac finally had peace again. But every so often, I'd catch myself glancing toward that house, wondering if Karen ever realized what she'd done not to me, but to herself. Because that's the truth about envy, it's self-consuming. It eats away at your joy, your decency, until all that's left is resentment, masquerading as righteousness. Karen's life had become her own punishment, long before the handcuffs. The moment she decided someone else's success was an insult to her existence, she'd already lost. One afternoon, about 6 months later, I drove the Lamborghini down the highway, top-down engine, singing that perfect mechanical symphony only Italian engineering can produce. The wind whipped past the horizon, stretched endless ahead, and for the first time in a long time I felt genuinely free. At a red light, a kid in the next lane rolled down his window. "Hey, Mr. Cool Car," I grinned. "Thanks, kid." He pointed. "Is that the one from the news?" I chuckled. "Yeah, but it's not about the car. It's about what you do when someone tries to take your peace away." He blinked, confused but smiling as the light turned green. I hit the gas. That night, as I parked back in the garage, the soft echo of the door closing felt like punctuation. Duke wagged his tail, and I sat there for a while, engine ticking as it cooled. People think revenge stories are about destruction, but this wasn't that. This was about survival, about standing your ground when someone tries to strip you of dignity and doing it without becoming what they are. Because real victory isn't watching your enemy fall. It's looking at yourself afterward and realizing you never stooped to their level. Karen destroyed a car, but she didn't destroy me. If anything, she reminded me that strength isn't built on anger or violence. It's built on discipline, patience, and knowing when to let justice do the work for you. In the end, this story wasn't about a Lamborghini or a HOA gone rogue. It was about control, pride, and the price of envy. Karen thought power came from enforcing rules and tearing others down. But true power lies in restraint, choosing to rise above chaos instead of feeding it. I learned that peace is fragile, but it's also worth defending. Whether you're on a battlefield or a suburban street, there will always be people who mistake kindness for weakness and order for submission. The secret is to stay calm, stay prepared, and never let them dictate your story. If life puts a Karen in your path, don't let her drag you into her storm. Stand firm, protect your peace, and let her drown in her own thunder. Because at the end of the day, justice doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be patient. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced someone who tried to take what you earned? What did you do? Drop your story in the comments below, and if you love seeing HOA justice served cold, hit that like button and subscribe because there's always another wild tale around the corner.